Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Genie, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Arya.
And welcome to episode number 128 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from October 1st, 1983. My name is Arya, and joining me as always is the Tracy Jordan to my Jenna Maroney. It's Trey. Trey, how you doing today?
Ain't nothing really happening with me. Kind of like what nothing happening on these shows we watched today.
I think it might be a contest to see which show had less happening on it. And one show is really only half an episode long, so you would think that's a pretty easy winner, but not really.
Yeah, I don't know. Mid-South seems slightly less pointless, I guess.
Yeah, it's Mid-South is in the middle of their slide downwards, their spiral until we get to Thanksgiving. And World Class, we're in theory in the hottest period ever. But when they're not flat out showing replays of matches we've already seen, they're promising matches that we have already seen many times.
Yeah,
But
it's there was nothing happened on this World Class show.
legit, like I was like super excited is probably a strong word, but Bruiser Brody versus Michael Hayes, I'm like, fuck yeah, Brody's gonna get to murder Michael Hayes for a few minutes and stand triumphantly in the end. And he definitely got to stand triumphant at some point.
Ken Mantell tuned his temporal radio into our show, and he heard us talking shit about his little brother and his booking, and he booked that finish just to spite us.
Definitely. And he booked the opening match then in a similar vein.
Oh,
It's like
there was
there's only one match in World Class this week that I guess technically has a decisive finish, depending on who you ask.
and it
And
wasn't good, and it was confusing.
well, I don't think John Mantell beating what's his name with a side Russian leg sweep was confusing.
No, not that one. Not that one.
Oh, that was technically, I mean, all sides would agree that, it was a decisive finish.
I mean, the Mongols submitting to the Iron Claw was pretty decisive.
Yeah, but um, as Mr. Akbar informed us, only he is allowed to submit for his men.
I don't think
And
that's how that
he,
works.
there's a lot of, I don't think that's how it works going on in these two shows this week. This is we could almost label the show previously on something else because even the stuff that's actually new, it's previously on something else.
Okay.
Oh God. At this point, since we've already talked about most of the damn show already, do you want to talk about World Class first and do things backwards this week?
Yeah, why not? A little bit of variety. I will say, though, you talk about even the things that were new, just were so familiar. There is a match on Mid-South between JYD and King Kong Bundy that, like, I halfway thought that it was the same match they aired a few weeks ago until they did a different finish.
Oh my God. I we'll get to that, I guess. But
Let's talk.
let's start at the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, and go to Bill Mercer, who's going to introduce this week's show.
Welcome to World Class Championship Wrestling from the Sportatorium, world famed for its wrestling events. And tonight, our main event is an action-charged thriller featuring the tremendous Bruiser Brody against the inimitable Freebird Michael Hayes. That's our main event. Now, coming up very shortly on World Class Championship Wrestling here in Dallas will be the world champion, Harley Race. Well, we've had a lot of requests. How about a great match that he's been in? One of the greatest was his battle, the World Championship with Kevin Von Erich. And you're going to see that next on World Class Championship Wrestling.
All right. So before we get into that, this is one of those weeks where Bill Mercer's wearing the headset with the giant ball in front of his face that like takes up half of his face, it looks like. And I'm like, and I always end up questioning myself, does he have this every week? And I'm pretty sure he doesn't, because I'd like to think I'd notice him with the giant ball in front of his face every single week like this.
Maybe he realizes how goofy he looks without the mustache, and he's just trying to cover as much of his face as he can.
Yeah, that is true. Maybe him and Terry Gordy have like an inside bet that they haven't let anybody else in on when it comes to mustaches. Because Gordy had his teenage boy mustache again this week.
Yeah,
And
I was really hoping he would have shaved that.
Terry Gordy is dead, so I am allowed to make fun of his mustache. Because I'm fairly confident that Ray Gordy does not listen to this show and will not come and kick my ass for this.
What about what's the girl's name? Miranda? I think Miranda listens to the show.
Who's Miranda?
Gordy's daughter. She's like
Oh.
She's worked for like the biggest company that she's worked for was like the NWA, which the Billy Pumpkins NWA, not any version of the NWA that anybody cares about.
I somehow blocked it from my memory, even though I don't think I've ever seen her wrestle. But by the way, since not that there's a whole lot to talk about on this show anyway, the NWA is pretty much dead at this point, we think. I mean, this show comes out on Tuesday, and unlike the NWA show, I promise this show's going to come out on Tuesday. The NWA show this week, who knows? It usually comes out on either Mondays or Tuesdays. I don't remember which, but the CW app is, kicking them off apparently. All of their stuff is going to be off the CW app by the time you hear this, because they got to make way on that app for NXT. And the NWA, as of this taping, Billy Corgan, hasn't made any kind of announcement as to where this Tuesday's show is supposed to air. And for some reason, I'm on the NWA email list. I don't know how I got added to it, but I've been getting emails pretty regularly for the last few months. I haven't gotten anything this week for this coming week's show. And since they no longer do pay-per-views, this show is supposed to be the one from the 76th anniversary show where Bram won the NWA World title in an event that is so not newsworthy that no one has brought it up in the month since it's happened.
Yeah, I am a title history nerd, and I've always, at the very least, kind of kept track of the NWA World title. I did not know until you told me like yesterday that the NWA title changed hands a month ago.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people that I knew the night that Tokyo Monster Haggis won the NWA title.
Yeah.
And I did, yeah. And
I
did not know.
I almost drove like 4 hours when Tenzon dropped the title to Jack Stane. I kind of wish I had.
Because when do you ever get to see an NWA World title change?
I did one. I was at All In when Cody beat Magnus.
Aldis?
Yeah, Nick Aldis.
I have never seen one, mostly because by the time that I was old enough to, you know, go to actual wrestling shows myself. Actually, um, and I actually forgot this was a thing until I was reading the 1995 Observer Yearbook. I was supposed to be at an indie show in February of 1995 in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, where Chris Candido was supposed to lose the NWA title to Dan Severn, but it got snowed out.
Is that why they did it on a Smoky Mountain House show in Erlanger, Kentucky?
Yes, because they were trying to get the belt off of him, off of Candido before, spoiler alert, he starts in the WWF. And, you know, at that point, that was pretty much the last option they had. But yeah, I was
Yeah,
supposed to see an NWA World Title change, but the show got canceled due to snow.
that's a bummer.
Yep, 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 yep. So enough about the NWA. Let's talk about the NWA. So
Yeah,
Harley Race is going to be showing up in World Class soon. I don't know when, but my death is going to be soon, too. That's in theory. Um, but yeah, Harley allegedly is going to be on the show. I imagine he's going to be here, like you mentioned, the day after Thanksgiving.
that's what I'm
Um,
hoping.
yeah. Um, and so we're going to watch a Harley Race match. And which Harley Race match are we going to watch? The only one that we've seen on this show now, at least twice. Him versus Kevin Von Erich at the Greatest International Star Wars in June for the NWA title. It's the match where David Von Erich runs in and gets his brother intentionally disqualified, proving that he's a dick because he couldn't just let his brother get a world title match. And if you want to hear us talk about that, go listen to episode number 100, where we recap the entire Greatest International Star Wars show, including the Mexican National Women's title match. Um, and I'm sure, were there little people on that show? I forget. I feel
No, I
like,
don't think so. Oh, but there was something that I did not realize at the time that I put together later. Lola Gonzalez is married to Fishman, so that would
oh, nice.
explain why they were both on the card.
Because it was like, hey, I'm gonna book one of you. And I'm like, well, you can't just have one of
Yeah.
us. Like, okay, well,
I'm
bring other
guessing. I'm
people.
guessing. I'm guessing they wanted the women's match just as an attraction. Like, yeah, we'll book Fishman.
It's not just any fish man though, but the fish man.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
fast forward 18 minutes. So like, okay, ready for the show to actually begin here. However, we then have to rewatch Jimmy Garvin being valet for a day for David Von Erich. Now, that is certainly a fun segment and a fun skit that we saw a few months ago, and I didn't feel like watching it again. So I fast forwarded another six
Yeah.
minutes. And
So
so at this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
let's take note. Let's take note for just a second. Okay, if you remember, the finish of the Harley Race Kevin Von Erich match is David getting Kevin disqualified and then saying that he wanted a title shot. And then so we saw that segment, and then we saw the replay of the David Von Erich's valet for a day. So like the first 20 or so minutes of this show were just about David Von Erich being a dick.
Yep. And it's not the last time we're going to see David Von Erich be a dick on this show. And so now this show is 43 minutes and 45 seconds long. We are 24 minutes into the show. So we have 20 minutes left, and it's time for a match. It's Bill Rathke versus John Mantell. And I was begging to watch Lola Gonzalez and Vicky Carranza in a Mexican national women's title match. Um,
Uh
they they
so
announced that this match has a 15-minute time limit, and I wrote, if this goes anywhere near 15 minutes, I hope Brody storms out and murders them to death.
I was very disappointed. Bill Rathke has a singlet now, and it just ruins his aesthetic. He was so much better with the long tights and the hairy barrel chest.
I'd say this was not a good fashion choice for Bill Rathke. So, Bill, if
No,
you're listening to us, go back in time and change your look.
that's really
Mercer
the only
during
note I have about this match.
Mercer said during this match that the main event would be, and I quote, an action packer. And then he called Mantell a fence builder. And I totally believe Mantell builds fences around rats. That's just me.
Do the people know what that term means?
So in wrestling parlance, a fence builder is a wrestler who hogs a rat, I guess is one way to put it, and that he doesn't let any of the other boys after her, and so it's like he's building a fence around the girl.
So, since we have very little to talk about on the show, I'm going to tell this story about what year was it? 2016, 2017. I had occasion. I was up in Wichita Falls, Texas, and at the time, do you remember the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, like the one that was in upstate New York, and then for some reason they moved it to fucking Wichita Falls, Texas?
I do.
So I had time to kill, so I went to check it out, and there was this older fellow there, and he was kind of in charge of the museum. So we talked about a little bit of stuff, and it was a neat little thing, I guess. And did some gear, saw Tommy Rogers Ribera Steakhouse jacket. It was a nice way to burn a little while. And I had no idea until much later that the guy that I had spent all that time talking to was a wrestler, and it was in fact Johnny Mantell.
Wow. We've been ripping on John Mantell now for months, and this is the first we're hearing that story.
I realized I realized like several shows ago because I said, "Oh, I've never told the story about the time I met Johnny Mantell. I'll tell it sometime." And I don't know. Today seemed like the day to break it out.
Today's the day to break out a lot of stories that we've never
Yeah.
discussed.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to have something really fun to talk about later on in the show, I promise. Um, by the way, John Mantell wins with a side Russian leg sweep because of course he does. The
Also
Mongol
known as
versus. Mhm.
also known as a Kawazu drop. If you're a Giant Baba fan.
I can't picture Baba doing. Maybe because the only Bob I ever really saw was after he's old and broken down a bit, and maybe. But like I can't picture him doing a side Russian leg sweep.
Baba was pretty fun in the 70s, I have to say.
Well, up next we got the Mongol with General Skandor Akbar versus David Von Erich. And the countdown is on because now that we're in October, we are down to only 4 months left until David dies.
Spoiler.
Um, Spoiler, most of the people in this company die due to tragic reasons. It's
Yeah,
kind of,
Michael Hayes still putting together the main event segments on SmackDown.
yes, yes. Something just isn't right about that. I mean, good for him. I'm happy he's still alive and in apparently reasonably good health, but it's like every fucking buddy else is dead except for him
Uh,
and
so I've
Kevin, I
been,
guess, but you know.
I think I mentioned on the Smoky Mountain podcast that I've worked, I've inserted All Japan TV into my 1993 playlist. So I've been
Hmm.
watching that every week, and it's 93 All Japan is fucking fantastic if you ever have a chance. But I realized that like we're only about 3 months away from Gordy's second overdose, like the one that he never really came back from.
Hmm.
And I don't know what the hell was going on. It He had a shitty match with Stan Hansen in like the semi-main event of the Budokan, and I don't know what the fuck happened there.
I don't know. We'll have to see what we can find out about that match.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything to find out about it. It was just something I wanted to note. We are outspoken fans of Terry Gordy as a wrestler on this show, and it's just I don't know. You bring about so many people on this show just had really tragic ends.
Well, we do get some interesting news during this match with the Mongol, believe it or not.
Yes.
We find out that Sunshine is going to have her own assistant soon.
Yeah.
And
It's,
I'm not going to spoil anything if you don't know where that angle's going, but that angle, that's a pretty good fucking angle that we got coming up here.
I don't know
Um,
where it's going. I have a guess.
you could, I'm positive you could figure it out in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, probably.
Yes. And being the great podcast we are, we're not going to talk about it right now. We'll talk about it like
No.
next week when we're still months away from it happening. But, we're tired of, waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
Mercer was so excited by this match that he started theorizing what Sunshine's assistant's name would be. Um, Mongol goes for a test of strength. Now, Mongol was not being a dick here. Mongol lifted his arm up for the test of strength. Like, it's not like David went up for it and Mongol put his hand down and went up the other hand and, like, was a dick of his own. No, no, no. Mongol wanted to test who the stronger man was. He had his hand up waiting for David, and David, who admittedly is several inches taller than Mongol, shot his hand way into the air so Mongol couldn't reach it. David is a dick.
Such a dick. Oh. And I know
And
I know I know that this was a match against the Mongol, and the Mongol isn't exactly Ric Flair or Jack Briscoe. But I keep waiting for some kind of evidence. Like the conventional narrative is that David was the best wrestler of the brothers. And I've been watching
Mhm.
this show for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months now. I have not seen any evidence that David was better than Kevin.
I'm not seeing it either, and I don't know, maybe because I mean we're not seeing every match they have,
Yeah,
obviously, because they have the Fort Worth show, they have other house shows.
yeah.
So, it's possible that Kevin had red light disease, that he turned it on when the red light was on. And
And in
David
in
was more of
fairness, in fairness, a lot of people will say that the David stuff really hinges on like he did some good hill work in Florida apparently. So I don't know, maybe that's it.
possibly. By the way, David gets the claw on, and about 10 minutes later, the Mongol submits. And
Oh
David,
my god, this submit, this finish was so
Mhm.
weird. It
It's like he got it on, and it just kept going and going and going. I'm like, okay, well, the Mongol, he's big, tough, rough guy. Like he's not gonna submit because it's like he's one of Akbar's guys. He's Akbar's bodyguard. So they're just gonna do like, it was one of those times where it's like the claw is the ultimate finisher, except it's not. And nope, he eventually spontaneously begins bleeding, and he verbally submits.
I wrote here: the longer you keep the claw on somebody, the dumber it looks.
I was far more interested in a banner in the background of the Sportatorium. They're having a contest with your local TV station where you could win a Ford Bronco.
Oh man, I've
Do,
always wanted one of those.
yeah. Do you think that's where OJ got his?
Rocco wasn't OJ's, was it? It belonged to that Al Cowlings. Maybe that's where Al Cowlings got it.
Oh, there we go. You know, it's funny to talk about things like that. I mean, do we have
Yeah.
any
So
proof that Al Cowlings
I,
wasn't in Dallas at the time?
hey, that's what we do on these here podcasts. We crack open long-standing mysteries. If you listen to the Oh My Godcast that dropped last week, we actually solved the mystery of what happened to Jimmy Hoffa, one of the most famous disappearances in American history. Go check that
Wow.
out.
Was he in the front row of the ECW arena?
No, he's the Dark Patriot.
Oh. Nice.
Yeah,
Good for him.
glad he
Yeah.
landed on his feet. I thought it was Doug
I-
Gilbert, but what do I know?
Well, I just figured if Doug Gilbert's around, he's yelling about Jerry Lawler raping a little girl.
Oh god. Oh god, I had heard about that and I never actually watched it until like, I don't know, a week or so ago. I just happened upon it on YouTube. Holy shit.
You know I'm Doug Gilbert. And Jerry Lawler, you raped a little 13-year-old girl. How to get a show canceled in 5 seconds.
Anyway, why the fuck was the Mongol so bloody? Like, are we to believe that David squeezed his head so hard he just started bleeding everywhere?
Yes, that's happened before. Didn't you notice?
I had not seen that happen before.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't think.
the thing. When you have the claw on for an extended period, it makes the guy bleed.
So it's like a fucking brain squeeze. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
Didn't the great Khali do that shit and it like never made
No
anybody
one ever
bleed?
bled.
So am I to believe that David Von Erich has a stronger grip than the great Khali?
I mean, have we ever tried to have David Von Erich squeeze a basketball?
I guess not. I guess we never will now.
Yeah. And thus Batista, or whoever the Batista of world class would be, can't come out here and talk about how basketballs don't hold grudges.
Who is the Batista of this show?
Who's always getting title matches despite, not really earning them? Jimmy
Tommy
Garvin, maybe? I
Cairo. Tommy Cairo on Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Okay, so David Von Erich, the world class guy, is the Great Khali, and Tommy Cairo of Eastern Championship Wrestling is the Batista.
Oh.
Let's go to Mr. Akbar, who disagrees with the result of this match.
The decision for this match is incorrect. I and only I can submit for any member of my organization. And to begin with, nobody in Devastation Incorporated ever submits in any match. Your decision was incorrect. Do you understand? No decision. No.
Akbar didn't like the decision of the referee, even though his man was down, out, and beaten. And
I mean, I personally, anything with any of the world-class referees, I would automatically believe that it's incorrect. And this was Bronco Lubick.
I don't have a whole lot of faith in Bronco Lubick, but I think he made the right call here. Man was bleeding all over the fucking place.
I mean, it's possible that there was not actually a verbal submission. It's possible that, hey, he's bleeding all over the place. The claws went on for a while. There's no sign of life. There's no sign that he's intelligently defending himself. It's time for a referee stoppage. He's the big John McCarthy of his day.
Is it the sportatorium screw job? Fritz come out and go, ring the fucking bell.
Ring the bell. It's very possible. I mean, do we know that Bronco Lubick did not just run out the side of the building and get into his brother's car and drive off?
I don't believe Bronco Lubick was running anywhere.
Bruiser Brody versus Michael Hayes. So the highlight of everything we've watched on this show this week. We come back from commercial and Brody just beating the fuck out of Hayes. The bell rings and then Mercer announces the bell never rang to start the match, which was great.
Yes.
Drunk Mark Lawrence then decided that we must have the match introductions, even though the match has already started and, there's some clubbering going on. But that's drunk Mark Lawrence. He takes his job very seriously, apparently. We then get the finish. And you might think to yourself, hey, wait a second. Where the hell's the rest of the match? And I'm like, I'm telling you the rest of the match. We got the intro. We got Mark Lawrence introducing the match. And then we got the finish. Brody was super upset because Hayes slammed his face into the turnbuckle, so he begins tearing apart the turnbuckle pad itself. This brings out Terry Gordy coming in defense of turnbuckle pads everywhere, who attacked Brody for the disqualification. As the heels beat on Brody... I'm sorry, go ahead.
1 minute and 34 seconds.
Longer than I thought it went. As the heels beat on Brody, John Mantell runs in, Chris Adams runs in, and they both get their asses kicked. Now, I should clarify, Adams did get his ass kicked by Gordy and not by John Mantell, which is important that I point that out because you may automatically think that Chris Adams got his ass kicked by John Mantell. Terry runs in unsuccessfully at first, but eventually the faces run up to heels, and the segment ends with Kerry cradling Chris Adams in his arms afterwards.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's we wouldn't be doing our job as broadcast journalists if we didn't recap the information so precisely.
Yes, I was happy for Chris Adams that he was being cradled, so lovingly there by Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah.
So let's go to I don't even know if this is the highlight of the show, but one of the highlights of the show closing promo with Bill Mercer and Terry Gordy.
Next week, Terry Gordy right here will meet Kerry Von Erich. Will, tell us about your appearance tonight.
Let me tell you this, Bill Mercer. I'm here to clean up a little of this mess going on around here.
With your Oriole spike?
Hey, don't interrupt me when I'm talking. When I'm talking about mess, I'm talking about the Bruiser Brodies. I'm talking about the Kerry Von Erichs. All the Von Erichs. And it don't matter where it's at, Bill Mercer. It don't matter if it's in Dallas. It don't matter if it's in Fort Worth. It don't matter if it's in San Antonio. It don't matter if it's in St. Louis.
It'll be here next week on World Class Championship Wrestling.
Right. It's the fight.
Okay, I marked out for that promo, especially at the end, because Gordy's just killing time might be a strong word, but Gordy's just he's in the middle of a 3-minute promo and they do not have 3 minutes. And so Mercer gets his opening and he's like, nope, it'll happen right here next week. Goodbye. And Gordy's just freaking out and going on. So I love that.
So I have 2 questions. One is, as we've already, I bet you don't. One, as we already established, is what the fuck is on Gordy's upper lip. The other one is what the fuck was on Buddy Roberts' head.
In order, his tween-age puberty mustache and his new wig.
Where the fuck where do you find a wig like that?
I would say it was a Rastafarian wig, but it was blonde and not black. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. This thing is fucking. It looks like, imagine one of those fucking prop Halloween spiders, and just kind of color it a little lightish brown, blondish. That was what was going on Buddy Roberts' head here.
I would like to point out that it's been 3 or 4 months at this point. Why the hell hasn't his hair grown back yet?
Hey, Kurt Angle lost a hair match 22 years ago and his hair still hasn't grown back.
Very true. By the way, I've got 2 pieces of breaking news here at 11:46 p.m. on Friday night. Not that this is going to mean anything when the show drops Tuesday morning, but the TNA TV tapings in Spartanburg have been postponed yet again. So now they're going to be Monday and Tuesday. They're supposed to be, were they supposed to be Thursday, Friday, then they got moved to Saturday, Sunday. Now they're going to be Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, that's if you're on the East Coast, I hope you're fucking not on the East Coast anymore.
Unless you're like up north like me, because it's not hitting me.
Yeah, if you're if you're in the old Eddie Graham or Jim Crockett territories, best wishes to you.
And then the other news, I'm still on the group of voters for the Observer Hall of Fame because I just got my ballot.
You know what? One of these days I'm gonna make it and I'm gonna know that I'm finally somebody.
If it helps, I think you're somebody.
I don't know what I gotta do. I mean, I think Dave kind of likes me. I don't know what I gotta do to get on the thing.
Obsessively send him emails throughout the year.
Yeah, I guess
The
so. Maybe I'll try that.
the Usos are on the ballot. Sid Vicious is on the ballot. I imagine neither of them will get very many votes. And that's with no disrespect to the Usos or Sid Vicious.
Yeah. Any like actual likely candidates on the ballot?
Well, what the hell? Let's go down the list here. The
All
U.S.
right.
candidates are Asuka, Mark and Jay Briscoe, the Young Bucks, Edge, Bill Goldberg, Samoa Joe, the Hardy Boys, Becky Lynch, John Moxley, the Outsiders, Paul Orndorff, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Trish Stratus, the Steiners, the Usos, Sid, Bray Wyatt, and Sami Zayn.
There's a lot of really strong candidates on that list.
Well, I did skip over the historical list, the historical performers list here. Ole Anderson, Afa and Sika, Bullet Bob, Tully and Arn, the British Bulldogs, June Byers, Wild Bull Curry, the Junkyard Dog, Cowboy Bob Ellis, Pampero Firpo, Black Gordman and Great Goliath, the Mongolian Stomper, the Hart Foundation, Sputnik Monroe, Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch, Johnny Rougeau, the Iron Sheik, Rick Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, Mad Dog and Butcher Vachon, and the only three-man unit on the list, Kevin, Carey, and David Von Erich.
I think Sputnik Monroe should be a slam dunk. As
I
far as
think
like
he's
historical importance.
and I think he's one of those candidates that are never going to get the respect he deserves because it's like I don't know, it's like it's too old school for people who vote in these things.
Yeah, see, this is why I should have a ballot.
Well, even if you did though, you got to get 60%, and so you got to convince more than one person, my friend.
Well,
you want to hear
who's on the yeah, I
mhm.
want to hear the Japan ballot.
As I was going to mention, Shima, Kojima and Tenzan, Yoshiaki Fujiwara, Hayabusa, Antonio Inoki and Sakaguchi, Kento
As a
Miyahara,
team?
who
Inoki and Sakaguchi individually or as a team?
as a team,
Okay.
Kento Miyahara, Zack Sabre Jr., Miko Satomura, Tiger Jeet Singh, Shingo Takagi, Yoshihiro Takayama, and Manami Toyota and Toshio Yamada.
Some really strong candidates on that list too. There's like a couple that it might be too soon for. Like, I don't know. It
Miyahara.
Shingo, I think, is a Hall of Famer just as a worker, but it might be, I don't know. He didn't have to go in this year. Zach didn't have to go in this year. Uh,
Kento
Ken
doesn't have to go
Koji,
in.
Kento is very early, but like
I'd be a little surprised if he got in though, because All Japan is, I guess, still doing a little better now, but All Japan is so under the radar
yeah,
that
he's
a lo-
it It's a shame because Kento Miyahara is so fucking good.
I think Tenkoji has a chance. I don't know.
I mean,
Who else
Toyota and Yamada are like one of the greatest tag teams of all time too. I mean, I don't
That's
know.
another. Yeah.
I don't know how many people are that vote at this point are familiar with like '90s All Japan women.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say here. Mexico, I don't know any of this stuff. Like, I mean, I know the people who appeared in WCW and the occasional, you know, North American stuff, like, Masquerita Sagrada, El Dandy, uh, let's see, El Hijo del Santo and Octagon. But it's like I wouldn't be comfortable voting for any of those. Same thing with Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, and Africa. Even if I know the
Yeah.
names, it's like I don't know them enough.
What categories do you vote in?
Well, they've changed it because it used to be you could only vote for 10 wrestlers and 5 non-wrestlers. And now it's changed to where you can vote for X number of candidates per section. So the historical candidates, you can vote for up to 7, the US and Canada up to 7, Japan up to 4, Mexico up to 4, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, Africa up to 3, and non-wrestlers up to 7. So in theory, you could vote for 14, 18, 25. You could vote for 32 people if you were so inclined. But
By the way,
let me
happy
see
birthday, Jado, who's it will have been like 5 days ago by the time anyone hears this, but Saturday the 28th, I just saw New Japan posted happy birthday to Jado.
Nice. I have till November 8th to go through there and make my picks. If
Cool.
tradition is of any note, November 7th, I'll be like, oh shit, I never sent in my ballot, and I'll make my list in like 5 minutes. But
You're gonna do what I
what?
do. You're gonna do what I do with my car registration.
Wait till the last minute. Um,
Yeah.
so somehow we've gone almost an hour just talking about world class. So let's move on with our lives and go 190 miles to the east this time to the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana for Mid-South Wrestling. Let's go to Boyd Pierce and the golden-throated Jim Ross, who will eventually begin talking, I promise.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, and we have 60 minutes of exciting action, interviews, and telling you about things to look forward to in the future. And live action here this week, we'll see the Junkyard Dog as he takes on 420-pound Devastation Incorporated from Atlantic City, Big King Kong Bundy. Another great wrestling battle, we'll see the North American Heavyweight Champion Hacksaw Butch Reed in action against popular Magnum TA. Jerry Oates is here along with his brother. You remember Jerry a few years ago, the former North American Heavyweight Champion from Columbus, Georgia. They form a formidable tag team, and we'll be seeing them in action along with all the top stars. And the man to tell you about it, my guest commentator this week, the golden-throated Jim Ross. Jim?
Boyd, thank you very much. And the wrestling fans that were watching us last week here at Mid-South Wrestling, remember that General Skandar Akbar brought the one-man gang back into this area for a very special encounter with the Junkyard Dog. Well, as usual, General Skandar Akbar had his hand loaded with aces, but a joker popped up in that hand that General Akbar had dealt the Junkyard Dog by the name of Crusher Darsow. It was a very exciting turn of events, something that General Akbar is very concerned about. Let's watch the edited highlights of that match now and join that match in progress, the Junkyard Dog against the one-man gang.
Do we have to go back and relive that moment? Can't I just press pause and us not watch it again?
Yeah, let's just not and say we did.
Sounds good. So, yes, today it's apparently replay day on these fucking shows, like we said, because it's Junkyard Dog versus King Kong Bundy, along with Butch Reed versus popular Magnum TA. which is a match we saw a few weeks ago because I said how much I loved that match, and I was apparently the only person.
I liked this one.
There's nothing
I don't
wrong with
remember.
it. Just, you know,
I don't
I didn't think it
remember
was as
the other
good
one,
as their
honestly.
first match. But yeah, we've got a recap of last week's situation with Crusher Darsow turning babyface to help Junkyard Dog in the battle with all of Akbar's heels. And we got a full 4 minutes replaying that situation before our first match.
See, I actually think I needed these replays because since you changed the taping schedule, like I could barely remember what happened last week because it's been 2 weeks since I watched it.
I like that we're breaking kayfabe here, you know.
That's what we do. We don't want to insult the people's intelligence.
We wouldn't want to insult anyone's intelligence ever here. And speaking of not wanting to insult anyone's intelligence, up first we had Crusher Darsow versus Frank Vert. Now, both Boyd and Jim Ross, and I don't know if you were here at the time, but both Boyd and Jim Ross claimed that we've never seen Frank Vert on this show before. But I remember we did. And the reason why I remembered was because when he was here previously, they put a space in his name, so it was Frank Vert. And I remember saying that over and over again, which annoyed our listener every time I would do that. And just to prove that I wasn't the crazy person, I went to Cage Match. I cage matched that shit and found the 2 matches he lost in April of '83. So
Oh, I
they're
just
Jim
missed them.
Ross and Boyd Pierce.
I mean, like a couple of weeks ago, they said somebody was debuting who had been on the show the week before. So I don't think Boyd has the best memory.
It's possible that he does not.
And
So
Jim Ross, a known cannabis enthusiast.
what the fuck was with these people in this crowd this week? They thought it was the fucking second coming of Christ with fucking Crusher Darsow.
Okay. Okay, so we made fun of Frank Levert here, Levert and Shirley. This was not a technical masterpiece, but I thought that this was like a good enhancement match for Darsow, because I mean, Levert was kind of like he was a pretty hefty guy, so Darsow throwing him around made him look like a big strong motherfucker. So I liked it on that level.
They said Darsow become more seasoned, which I assumed meant that Grizzly Smith sprinkled some oregano on him, which would be the worst thing Grizzly Smith has ever done. And as we mentioned, Darsow wins with an over-the-shoulder backbreaker, while the people cheered him to an absurd degree, considering it's Crusher Darsow.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's getting over. Good for him.
Jerry Oates and his tag team partner, his brother, Marty Oates, versus Doug Vines and Bob Stanton. Now, before they introduced the Oateses, I'm like, this sounds like a breakfast cereal in the morning, and not a very good one.
The Oateses.
Then we get the introduction. We get Doug Vines and Bob Stanton. Bob Stanton was so excited by being introduced that he slightly moved his hands up and down. And then we get the opponents. Jerry Oates is apparently a former North American champion before we began watching this show. And after watching this match, I'm really happy we did not ever see Jerry Oates as North American champion, because
really
it did not seem like a very he did not seem like a very exciting person to be North American champion.
I disagree.
Well, his partner, Marty Oates, looks like the type of coward who would dive through a window to get away from his former tag team partner.
He strikes me as somebody who likes to rock, maybe even as late as midnight.
Oh, God. He looks like the type of person who gets drugged out and claims that he murdered somebody in the 1970s who tried to have gay sex with him.
He looks like somebody who would get fired just a million fucking times.
He looks like somebody who would go on Facebook and talk about wanting to have sex with his daughter.
I got nothing left.
Marty Jannetty, by the way, in case, you couldn't put two and two together here. Marty Jannetty is Marty Oates.
Where was Ted?
Where was Ted Oates? I don't know.
I actually looked at Cage Match, and apparently he only, according to, he's only got like 2 matches for all of like 1983 on Cage Match. So maybe I don't know, maybe he took some time off or quit the business for a while. I don't know. Jerry had to find another brother.
Well, the highlight of this match, in my opinion, was Stanton punching Jerry in the face. So Jerry punched him in the face to the approval of the fans, although not at the level of Crusher Darso shows up in his cutoff jorts approval, but still. And then Jerry submitted Stanton with a spinning toe hold.
Know that I've ever seen Jerry Oates wrestle before, but he seems like someone that I would enjoy seeing wrestle more. But apparently I'm in the minority on that. Or there's only 2 of us. I'm in the half of that.
I was gonna say, where is our third person? Call up Cindy. It's it's 9 o'clock over in Seattle. I'm sure Cindy's awake.
What do you think of Jerry Oates?
She's like, thanks for including me, guys.
I don't know. I like fucking wrestlers like that. He was in there busting ass, doing some neat wrestling. I was into it.
Well, maybe next week I'll have to pay more attention to him.
Yeah.
But then we got, looks like cue card, Nikolai Volkov versus Art Cruz. Reeser forgot Nikolai's name during the intro and had to pause to look down in order to remember it. At one point, Volkov picked Cruz up for what I thought was going to be a choke slam, but apparently he was just happy with a raised choke because after a few seconds, he let Cruz down. He gave Cruz an Irish whip, and Cruz appeared to die because Cruz just face plants and doesn't move. So Volkov then decides if he's not already dead, I'm going to kill him because he gives the guy a backbreaker, and Art Cruz, like, it's a fucking backbreaker. We've all seen it. You bend at the knee, you deposit your guy on there. Well, Volkov somehow landed him in a way where Cruz landed on his head and shoulders on the mat. And then Volkov didn't even, let him down onto the mat. He held him there on his head and shoulders to pin him.
Up to that point, I was kind of into this. I was thinking we needed to add Nikolai to the list of guys who were actually ass kickers before that WWF road schedule got him.
I mean, he was an ass kicker in some way here because poor Art Cruz.
He kicked Art Cruz's ass.
Like when he whipped Art Cruz in and Art Cruz face plants and doesn't move, I'm like, uh-oh, did something go wrong here? But apparently not. Or Volkov was like, if something's not wrong now, it's going to be in a second.
Maybe being in that terrible mixed tag match last week just broke Art Cruz's confidence.
Oh, God. King Kong Bundy with 5 count action versus Junkyard Dog with bad theme song. If Junkyard Dog had ever been arrested while wearing his gear, how do you think his fellow prisoners would have reacted to him wearing pants with the word thump on his ass?
I shudder to think.
So this is what I wrote about this match. This is a rematch from last month when Bundy cleanly pinned Dog for a 3 count, but because Bundy demands a 5 count and Junkyard Dog kicked out at 4, it didn't count. Now you might think Bundy would grow a kayfabe brain and not insist on that. You might think that, but not only did Bundy continue to insist on a 5 count, it happened again. He cleanly pinned Dog for the second time in a month, but because Junkyard Dog kicked out at 4, it did not count.
So even before the match actually happened, I saw the matchup and I wrote, it feels like we're starting to get world-class levels of repetitive here. And then I watched the fucking match, and so it was the same thing that I noted last time, of where it was weird because I thought Dog was tapping out to a hammerlock, but tap outs don't signal submissions yet. They did that again. They stayed in that wrist lock for what felt like a hell of a long time, and then they did the 5 count kick out spot again. And at that point, I was legitimately wondering if they were just replaying the same match from like a month ago. But then they did a different finish.
Well, Dog then won with a body slam. It's possible that he meant to pick him up for the thump, but he didn't get him all the way up, and instead it was just a body slam. And that's pretty much the only place here where, that was different than the match from a month ago.
I wrote that it was the thump, so I guess I just took it in stride.
Well, let's go to Jim Ross, who's going to talk about last week's Butch Reed versus Jim Duggan match.
Well, as we have said
why does
times here on Mid-South Wrestling. Mid-South Wrestling is the #1 wrestling television program in all of America, and there's one great reason for that. That's because that you can see the top matches right here on television, and matchmaker Grizzly Smith does just a phenomenal job every week of putting the top stars in head-to-head competition. Well, he did that last week in the Battle of the Hacksaws, as Hacksaw Jim Duggan was pitted against the North American champion Hacksaw Butch Reed. Well, this match became an unofficial lumberjack match as the wrestlers piled out of the dressing room. They circled the ring, and it was a tremendous battle, a battle of the hacksaws. And we're going to join that match in progress now. Let's look at the edited highlights of the unofficial lumberjack match between the Battle of the Hacksaws that was held here last week.
Yes, the unofficial lumberjack match that was, I guess, an actual lumberjack match, because when the baby faces attacked the heel, it was not a disqualification.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Am I on? I'm not muted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well. So I noted that JR sucked Grizzly Smith's dick like he was a 12-year-old girl before showing a replay of that.
That's a lot.
I'm sorry. I that was too much.
That was the worst thing you've ever done.
Yes. By insinuating that Grizzly Smith likes to have his dick sucked by 12-year-old girls.
I don't... never mind.
North American champion Butch Reed versus Magnum TA. All I wrote about this was TA almost had the match won with a belly-to-belly suplex, but Reed kicked out and won with a flying shoulder tackle in a non-title match.
Okay, I found a little bit more substance to this than you did. I kind of like this because Magnum got to shine a little early on. Reed cut him off and got some heat. And then TA hit that belly-to-belly suplex out of nowhere, and I actually thought he might catch a quick one on him, but Reed kicked out, and that ended up being the extent of his comeback because Reed won with the shoulder block. But it was a 5-minute match that I thought was pretty good.
After the match, I don't know. I was zoning out at this point, and I'll tell you what finally put me to sleep later on in this show. But I was zoning out, and like Butch Reed was just still in the ring for like a minute, and apparently yelling for Duggan. So of course, Junkyard Dog runs out and walks Reed down.
Yeah. No Duggan, but Dog.
Yeah. The fans approved anyway.
Yeah. Fans are they kind of approve of whatever Dog does.
Pretty much. Jim the Anvil Neidhart versus Sam Hall. I wrote, why didn't Sam Hall team with one of the Oats earlier?
I wrote that it was Cash Wheeler's dad versus Scott Hall's dad.
So Neidhart wins with a Samoan drop. it's been 41 years. It's possible Jim Ross has not stopped talking. Because, good God.
Yeah, all I wrote about this match was JR talks about how Neidhart excites him.
He is the World Anvil Champion of Calgary.
Jim the Hammer Neidhart.
Yep. I know that they actually pronounced his name correctly, so there was that.
Because Watts wasn't there.
Oh, God. So then we get our main event anywhere in the country. Max versus Mike Bond. This match literally put me to sleep. Mike Bond hit Max's head into the turnbuckle, and Max is like, fuck you, and smashes his own head into it. And that's when I fell asleep. I woke up, and Max had his hand raised, and I assume he won with a middle rope headbutt to the stomach, but I did not actually watch the match, and I'm only assuming. And also, somehow during the however long this match lasted while I slept, my finger fell on the O key, and I wrote O about, 500 times.
So, at one point, Bond avoided like the first attempt at a diving headbutt and made a little comeback, and I was rooting for him, but he was not able to overcome Max. And Max did indeed win with a middle rope headbutt in 3 minutes and 7 seconds. And I thought, on the Max scale, this was pretty good.
I was actually going to ask you, how long was my nap?
Whatever percentage of 3 minutes.
At whatever point after Max slammed his own head into the turnbuckle, up until the bell rang, that's how long I was asleep for.
Was it a restorative nap?
That was Mid-South and World Class, two shows that in the history of pro wrestling definitely happened.
Absolutely. They definitely were shows with wrestlers having matches on them.
Some of them even happened in recent time frame to the date of this show.
Yeah, some of them.
All right. So I want to talk about a Junkyard Dog Michael Hayes promo. And no, we're not going back into 1980 Mid-South. So earlier this week, I Facebooked Trae, and I told him that I wanted to play a promo for him on this show, a promo that was so racist that the live feed, or live meaning, the feed that aired on TBS that day, is the feed that I've got, and they sound edit the worst part of the promo, but that does not mean there's not plenty of just fantastic stuff that I can get to play for you here. And if you can't figure out what Michael Hayes says that gets sound edited, I will definitely let you know when we're finished. But let's go to Magnum TA. Yes, Magnum TA, who is going to interview Michael Hayes and the Junkyard Dog. This is February 25th, 1989. World Championship Wrestling.
Welcome back to World Championship. 2 men at my side, Michael P.S. Hayes of the Junkyard Dog. Not two likely individuals to be hanging around together, but they do it anyway. And Michael, I got to ask you a question. I couldn't help but notice you're being scouted by Hiro Matsuda. What could that mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. They've come up, and they've had some pretty good offers. But let me tell you what Japanese money means to me. Not one damn thing. You understand? Because I want to explain something to you. I have always been my own man. I have always done what I wanted to do. And I don't need no gonna come dictate to me how to run my life, how to wrestle, and how to live the nightlife like I do. So thanks, but no thanks. It's just like this girl said to me when I was walking in. She said, how can somebody so bad
Looks so good. Give him the look. Give him that look. Give him that look, right? You know what? Now you see how it feel when somebody come and try to buy you, you know what I mean? I understand. He gonna go, also, I want Toyota. We don't need no Toyota. No, talk to him. Tell him what we need. We need some bone to chew on, and every dog needs a bone. Hey, man. Hey, and how about this? For the first time, the Junkyard Dog, Michael P.S. in the Mid-South together. Yeah.
What the fuck? That was what the fuck? What the fuck was that?
Trey, are we canceled yet?
We would if anybody listened to the show.
We don't need no Toyota. And because you're not watching the video of this as I'm playing it, you're not seeing Junkyard Dog's scrunched up face as he's saying it.
That's even worse than I've been watching like 93 Raws and stuff, and there cannot be a match with a non-white wrestler where Bobby Heenan doesn't say something at least moderately racist. This was much more than moderately racist.
Do you want me to give you hints as to what got sound edited?
If you must.
So, there's a few words in there that even I'm not going to repeat here on this show. But first, he gives the stereotypical description of Asian people's eyes. And then he proceeds to use the racist slang for a Chinese person and then a Japanese person.
Huh.
Yeah. And yeah. And by the way, Michael Hayes turns heel like 2 weeks later and joins Hiro Matsuda. So I guess he really did want a Toyota.
What the fuck was that called? It wasn't the JTEX Corporation. That was Gary Hart's. What was Matsuda's stable called?
Yamasaki Corporation.
Yeah, Yamasaki Corporation. This is when Sandy Scott was booking WCW.
No, not
right?
quite. This was when George Scott was booking.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize to Sandy Scott that I confused you with your idiot brother. That's
I mean, Sandy Scott was on the Smoky Mountain Board of Directors, so I don't, if you can let him off scot-free though.
Sandy Scott, Mark Curtis, and Drunk Mark Lawrence.
Suddenly, everything makes a lot more sense now.
That's yeah. What the fuck? Like that fucking Ric Flair being managed by Hiro Matsuda. Who the hell thought that was a good idea?
And it was throughout the entire Steamboat feud too, because he's still there. Like the funny thing is, I just watched Wrestle War. He's still there and then disappears when Flair wins, and then they have the angle with Funk.
I didn't remember him even being out there for that.
He comes out with Flair, but they don't reference him. If you're not looking for him, you're not gonna see him, and then he just disappears at some point.
Huh. That's very weird how I don't know, we remember 1989 WCW so fondly because there was there was Flair and Steamboat and Terry Funk. But then there was also all of this shit.
Pretty much. That was legitimately there was so much crap in that 1989 WCW, but it's hey, I remember how great Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat and Terry Funk were.
If you're lucky, that's all you remember.
Yeah. Well, actually, you could remember Sting versus Muta, that feud,
Yeah.
and also the whatchamacallit, what the hell was I thinking of? Hey, Luger had a really great heel run, and
He
that
had a
was
great
honestly
match
probably
with he had a great match with Steamboat at the Great American Bash, I think.
it's probably Luger's best run, and he doesn't get like because Luger, of course, he's a bit of a shithead at times, but it's like he doesn't get the credit he deserves for his good shit. Because like I'll still point out that he was the most over person in 1997. WCW, at least as a full-time wrestler standpoint.
And 88, 89, Luger was like actively good at wrestling.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
And to his credit, he seems like he's turned his life around in more recent years. So good for Lex. We wish him well.
Mm-hmm. Thumbs up to him there.
Yeah.
All right. So, hey, we've barely gone more than an hour here. I guess it's about time to tap out unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
No. ohmygodcast.com. Give us a listen. I don't know. I mean, if you like this show, that one's not any worse, I don't think.
What high praise.
Oh, yeah, so far I think we've kind of decided that we're going to do 2 episodes every other week, and then eventually there will be like extra episodes because of the arena shows that we have available. So, and like as I said, I got the audio working. So now I was inspired by how Arya does this podcast. I just ripped off, doing the audio from the actual show, and I actually got it working this time. And then we had about a 20-minute impromptu conversation about pro wrestling business models and how they've changed over the last 30 years. So if you want to hear some dorks talk about wrestling, besides, in addition, if you don't get enough of two dorks talking about wrestling on this show, go check out the Oh My God cast.
I think I need to call Jerry McDivitt.
I'll call Clarence Mason.
Yeah, you went up me there. What about Barry Bloom? Although he wasn't a lawyer, he was an agent.
What about Smart Mark Sterling?
Oh, of course. Smart Mark Sterling.
Your fellow, what the fuck is the demonym for people from Massachusetts?
A masshole.
Oh, yeah, okay, your fellow masshole.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank everyone for listening. Hopefully, if you are not listening to this, you're safe and sound, unless you're from other parts of the country other than the Southeast United States, in which case, why the fuck aren't you listening to this show?
Seriously.
But, thank you anyway. Take care, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.